Welcome, everyone. My name is Cassandra, and I um, am really glad that you're here with us today. We are getting together to go over Report 8 of the consent decree. And today we're going to be hearing from Jeff, and then we will be hearing from Chief Robinette, as well as from Janet Drake. And then we'll have an opportunity to hear from our city manager, Jason Batchelor, and then Chief Chamberlain. So to be a respecter of time and make sure that we have time for any questions that you want to ask, please feel free to ask those questions via chat as we are going through the presentations today. Each speaker will have an opportunity to answer questions. And if we do not get to all of those questions, feel free to hang on with us till the end because we will have an opportunity at the end to answer any unanswered questions. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jeff so that we can get started.
Thanks so much, Cassandra. Appreciate the opportunity to be here and speaking to you. Again, my name is Jeff Schlanger. I'm the independent consent decree monitor for the city of Aurora, and I'll be speaking to you a little bit about our 8th periodic report. This report reflects our obligation to provide the parties, the court, and of course the public with an updated status on the progress being made by the city of Aurora in meeting the mandates of the consent decree. This town hall is an extension of that obligation and a chance to answer questions that the public may have. The goal, of course, of the consent decree is to bring about lasting institutional change to Aurora's public safety agencies, and moreover, to bring about a philosophy of continuous improvement to those agencies. While public reporting and the holding of these town halls is certainly part of the monitor's job, the monitor's work and our reports are highly technical, dealing with measurements of each of the mandates of the consent decree in what can be described as eye-blurring detail. But that measurement is my main job, and it is obviously critical in the reform process. There's an old adage that says what gets measured gets done, and that, again, is what my job is. In my 10 minutes or so here today, I'm going to give you highlights from the report. And for those of you who want more detail, I commend you to the report itself, which is 327 pages in total and can be found on our website, auroramonitor.org. Let's talk about the headlines for this reporting period. And the headline really is that meaningful progress toward full substantial compliance has been made, but reform is ongoing. In sum, we are encouraged by the city's progress in several critical areas, especially in embedding that culture of continuous improvement, which is at the very heart of the consent decree. We are lucky now to have a permanent chief of police who, like the city manager and like the city attorney, fully embraces the consent decree and is fully supportive of the mandated reforms throughout the process. That said, full substantial compliance is not just about checking boxes. The real question is whether the reforms are operationalized. Are they being implemented correctly, consistently, and with the impact that we want them to have? Are they being felt by you, the residents on the street of Aurora? Let's just talk about some of the highlights and successes during this reporting period. So the department is really, as I said, moving towards substantial compliance. As of this reporting period, 57 out of 70 mandates, or 73% of the mandates, are in substantial compliance. That is a strong marker of progress, particularly in complex areas like policy revision, training implementation, and review systems. And as I have often said, this process is a marathon, not a sprint. This report represents the end of the third year in a 5-year program, a 5-year journey. And as with any marathon, success depends not on bursts of speed, but on sustained and deliberate progress. One of the major initiatives that took place during this period was reform of SWAT. The consent decree was initiated in large part because of the tragedy. And sadly, it took another tragedy to bring about significant reform of SWAT operations, which were not specifically addressed in the consent decree. Following the tragic officer-involved shooting of Kylan Lewis, APD and its new permanent chief, Todd Chamberlain, took significant and proactive steps, reviewing SWAT operations from top to bottom. Changes that were made in response to that event included new deployment protocols, enhanced training, and stronger command oversight, all designed to reduce risk and improve tactical decision-making. There were also improvements in the department's systems of accountability. The Force Review Board has been restructured, leading to a sharp reduction in case backlog and faster adjudications. In addition, officer histories are now being considered after adjudication, ensuring a more holistic accountability and targeted remediation. And at the very end of the reporting period, there were significant advances in contact data collection. Specifically, we've seen gains in the integrity and completeness of data being collected for officer stops. As of early 2025, form completion for enforcement actions exceeds 93%, a marked improvement that lays the groundwork for determining whether there exists bias in policing. All that being said, there remains some significant challenges. 3 mandates remain on a cautionary track. These include elements of data analysis and the early warning/intervention system. Each of these areas requires targeted attention in the future, and my team and APD are hard at work collaborating to make sure that that attention is given. In the area of data collection also, I think everyone certainly on the call may know that we are moving to a new system. That's the Axon system. And we need to make sure that that transition to that system is completed in a way that gives us the full functionality that we are looking for. So where do we go from here? Our key focus, as I mentioned before, now is on operational integrity. That means that we're not just reviewing whether policies exist, but whether those policies are actually guiding behavior in the field. Are stops and searches constitutional? Are officers de-escalating and otherwise acting in full compliance with the Constitution and state law? Are supervisors reviewing incidents properly? Are lessons being learned and applied? All of these are questions which need to be answered in the affirmative before the consent decree is ended. I am hopeful and optimistic that they will be. Just a word on community trust and critical incidents. I fully understand that events like the Kylan Lewis shooting and the most recent officer-involved shooting earlier this week continue to challenge public trust. The monitor's responsibility in these cases is to ensure that the city's response to such events is thorough, honest, and when necessary, followed by meaningful change. We believe that that was the case in the Kylun Lewis case, as tragic as that event was. What sets a reform-minded department apart is not that mistakes never happen. Even in the best departments, they do. But what sets the department apart is that when mistakes do happen, they are acknowledged, they are understood, and they are addressed. Aurora, through SWAT reform, and moreover, through its ongoing movement towards substantial compliance with all the mandates of the consent decree, has shown a willingness to confront significant issues head on. The city of Aurora is not yet done with its work, but there is good reason to be optimistic. The marathon continues with continued focus on accountability, data integrity, and operational follow-through. Aurora is on a path toward fulfilling the promise of the consent decree: constitutional, bias-free, and effective public safety for all members of the community. I thank you. I'm happy to answer questions when we're ready to do that. Cassandra, back to you.
Thank you, Jeff. For those who are attending, if you have any questions, please feel free to post them in chat. And since we do not have any questions at this time, I would like to turn it over to Chief Robinette to give an update from the fire department.
Good morning, and thanks everybody for being here. So the update as it pertains to the 8th report, we primarily focused on this one in the recruitment area. We finally have a final recruitment class that has incorporated the full recruitment plan that was adopted by the HR department, Aurora Fire Rescue, and the Aurora Civil Service. It was a collaborative construction of that report. The data is now coming in and being analyzed. We're working with the Civil Service and the vendor of the written test for the agency to analyze that data. So that will be ready for the next standing report. We continue to do ongoing training with our APD partners in de-escalation and transfer of care. The second phase, last year was the first phase. This summer will be the second phase of that training. And it has yielded tremendous results for us. Now there is virtually no mystery when we come on scene. If the police are there first, or if we're there first, we can seamlessly jump into the call in progress and manage the situation at hand without any confusion. That's where we stand today. If there's any questions for me, I'm happy to address.
Thank you, Chief Robinette. At this time, we don't have any questions for you. So I am going to move ahead to our next presenter, Janet Drake. And if questions come up, I'll ask in between. Janet?
I think Martha Fulford is here for Janet, Cassandra.
Thank you. Martha, please. Okay, it'll take us just a moment to make her a presenter. So if you don't mind, I would like to move on to our city manager, Jason Batchelor, and then I'll come back to you, Martha.
Thank you, Cassandra. My name is Jason Batchelor. I'm the city manager. I will just kind of echo what some of the things that has been said by Jeff. We appreciate the efforts of Jeff and his team to help us continue to meet the mandates of the consent decree. The city has been and remains committed to meeting the mandates within the consent decree. Both the fire department, police department, and our Civil Service Commission have made significant improvements over the last 3 years as we work towards full compliance with the consent decree. And so we are looking forward to continuing to share those, continuing to analyze our efforts and make sure that we are meeting not only the letter of the consent decree, but the spirit as well. And so I think happy to answer any questions that come up today, and just looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you. Do we have any questions at this time for our city manager? It is. I believe that is more for Chief Chamberlain. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Martha, and then I will address the question in chat with Chief Chamberlain.
Great, thank you so much, and apologies not to be on video. Not a whole lot more to add from our perspective. We wanted to thank in particular the CAC, the monitor, APD and AFR, and we look forward to the continued work.
Thank you, Martha. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Chief Chamberlain, and then I will address the question in chat towards him. Hi, Chief.
Hi, hello, everybody. Thank you so much for being part of this. I appreciate all the comments so far. Again, again, very humble to be able to represent the Aurora Police Department, and especially very humble to be able to do it during this period of consent decree review. I believe, as Jeff mentioned earlier, the consent decree is an important aspect of what we need to do as far as making sure all of our systems, making sure all our accountability are in place, and making sure that a reflection of both the negative work, but also all the incredible positive work that is happening within this organization, done by a very few men and women who are willing to step forward and put this badge on. So again, I am very thankful that this is unfolding. I think the one big aspect about this is that many of the systems that are being looked at, many of the things that are part of the consent decree are things that I thoroughly and will always believe in and have believed in over my 35 years of law enforcement. Things such as who's being stopped, when they're being stopped, why are they being stopped, incredibly important. But also, I think we always have to make sure, again, who's being victimized. Who's being victimized, how are they being victimized, where are they being victimized, and who is doing the victimization. To me, that's something that I truly believe in, and something that I'm very thankful that we can use this data to demonstrate that. And another aspect, I think, is just as important and something that I truly believe in, and I really look forward to unfolding. And it was actually the first day I was in this department, is a discussion I had with all of our staff personnel, is how are we tracking our personnel? How are we making sure that they are performing and doing the job that they are supposed to do in the way that the community and the way that the organization has that expectation? And so when you hear Jeff talk about an EWS or an early warning system, that's exactly what I want to see as well. But I want to see a more robust system. I don't want to see a system that just reports on what occurred after the fact. I want to see on what gives us projections or knowledge or understanding about what's going to occur with those particular personnel in the future. Just like Aurora spends a huge amount of time on intervention and prevention, trying to get individuals that have a high propensity of violence or individuals that have a high propensity of killing somebody or being killed themselves on another trajectory. That's exactly what I want to do with this agency and organization. I want to make sure that we are looking at our personnel, making sure that we understand what they are responding to, how are they responding to those calls for service, how are those risk mitigation issues occurring, are they involved in excessive use of forces, are they involved in excessive litigation, how are they using their sick time, how are they using their overtime, how are they using their time that they are on the clock, what are they exactly doing, and how can we measure that? And then what I want to look for also is modifications to that behavior. Again, if you see certain things starting to change, or if you see patterns of conduct, if you see a trajectory where all of a sudden somebody was doing really well, and then all of a sudden you start seeing that they're involved in multiple use of forces, or they're involved in a high number of risk mitigation issues. Again, some of that can be explained. It could be because before the officer was working in an administrative job, and now that officer might be working in one of the more violent, complex, troubled areas or operations within the organization. So that has to be reviewed and understood. But again, it also lets you know that if a person has not changed positions and not changed the direction that they're doing within the organization, but they seem to be something different. Being able to articulate that and understand that and have an intervention component before it goes bad for everybody, the community, the department, and that individual themselves is incredibly, incredibly important. And another aspect of that that I really believe in and I am completely committed to is not just identifying the individuals that are problematic, but also identifying those individuals that are performing really well and making sure that we are cultivating those individuals, making sure that those are the individuals that represent the department in a leadership capacity and performance level, and making sure that we address those people the same as we address the bad ones. Because sometimes those are the ones that get forgotten. Again, we spend so much time focused on a very, 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 very small percentage of officers that are problematic. And unfortunately, we forget a mass amount of officers that every single day are going out there answering incredibly complex calls for service, doing an incredible job, and they never get any acknowledgement or any understanding of what they're doing. And we don't really have that platform to articulate that out to the community as well. So those are the things to me that are very important. And with that, I'm going to stop and then I have a slide presentation I can do later on if you would like. But again, that's totally up to you as we move through this. You let me know.
Okay, I will, we do have a question from Dave Perry at the Sentinel. He said the APD transparency portal has made public a great deal of information about police activity related to use of force. Are there plans to enhance that portal, providing more details about the cases flagged by the system?
Yeah, that's absolutely ongoing. When you talk about quality through continuous improvement, that's an example of that. We want to be able to make sure real time that we get all the information that the community is asking for, the entire community, everybody. And again, that's when I talk about community, I really want to make sure that we are talking about the entire population of the city of Aurora. Again, our population rate probably now is somewhere in the area of 400,020. I think it shows in our census 404. That's the entire community that I want to make sure that they have all the awareness, all the knowledge, all the understanding about what's occurring in the place where they live, reside, and work. And so those strides, we're constantly doing it. The information that we're working on, again, you're seeing a lot more social media output as far as what we are doing, not only even on the portals, but just on platforms across the board, showing where crime is at, where issues are at, what things you're doing. Specifically in regards to the more complex issues, officer-involved shootings and things like that. Again, we are incredibly transparent as far as all aspects of that. We constantly share body-worn video on those things, but I will tell you that there is legal issues that we have to contend with when it comes to body-worn. Again, people say, "Oh, you're not transparent because you're not releasing body-worn video from an incident that occurred 3 days ago." Well, we can't even release that information from body-worn video from an incident that occurred 3 days ago. There are legal ramifications that we have to adhere to. There's an insurance that we talk with family members. There's insurance that all of these things are taking place and they're all codified. Those are steps that are legal to us. And so again, when we can deliver information, we will deliver it. There's nothing that this organization does that we will not put out, other than if it's a certain kind of undercover case or an ongoing case that's being involved that involves administrative or internal issues or involves external issues or court issues. But we will always be transparent with everything that we do and everything that we have. I have nothing to hide in this organization.
Thank you, Chief. And we'll turn it over now for your slide presentation.
Okay. Let me see if I can do this. So hold on a second.
And while he's setting that up, if you have questions for any of the presenters today, please feel free to put them into chat and I will present them afterwards.
And can you see the show?
Yes, you got it.
All right. Thank you. I kind of wanted to show a couple different things I think they're really important to have a discussion on. I wanted to talk a little bit about our calls for service and how those calls for service impact our response, how they impact what we are doing, and how they impact who we are responding to and how those calls are unfolding. So this is an example where it's reported crimes or calls for service. And again, you will see on the top line where those calls are per month. If you look at the bottom line, it says the number of calls is in blue. Number of reported crimes is down below. And so for each month, Aurora PD responds to roughly about 21,000 calls for service based on working relationship with Aurora 911 and such. And you can see that reported crime has actually gone down. We actually right now have a reduction in crime across almost all of our violent, as well as all of our property-related crimes. We are at 22.1% reduction in crime all the way across the city of Aurora. I also wanted to compare those to arrest to reported crime. So again, this is an example where you can see the top line, it's the blue line. Again, it shows the number of reported crimes. And that's when I talked about a reduction in crime. So in April of 24, May of 24, you can see it was going up. In August of 24, the department started to make a huge shift. Changed policy, we changed our procedures. We modified a lot of things that got our officers and personnel to start focusing on response times, calls for service. And we also put a lot more as far as proactive policing approach of actually making contact with individuals committing crime. Again, when you look at the foundation or what crime is, it's about maintaining social order. It's about making sure that individuals do not get victimized. And it's also about making sure that those individuals who victimize somebody are held accountable. And so in August, you start to see that shift. So you see the arrests start to go up. Each month it starts to go up, and then we have a trend of crime going down. And so as of April, we had 1,683 number of reported crimes, and we had 697 arrests. And that's the trajectory of kind of where those numbers are across the board. I also wanted to compare it again when you look at arrests versus use of forces. So again, the blue line is the number of arrests, and gold line represents the number of use of forces. And so it shows that the arrests have gone up each month, the contacts have gone up each month, and the number of use of forces have gone drastically down. So that is the goal that we wanted to really achieve. Another thing I wanted to review real quickly was the number of external officer complaints per month. And again, I think that's just as important because you could say, okay, you're doing more proactive policing, you're holding more people accountable, you're stopping victimization, but are you doing that where you're focusing your attention in the wrong way? Are bad things happening? Are you over policing? And these numbers kind of counter that narrative. And so again, to me, that was really important as well. So the blue line represents the number of arrests. And you can see from August, it starts to tick up. In April, we are now at 697 arrests. And then the orange line is the complaints. Our complaints did not go up during that period of time. Actually, our complaints have trended down. So in April, we had only 30 complaints that were external. And this was why we were introducing and being involved in much, much more proactive policing, much more arresting, much more contact of individuals where that propensity, if activities are done incorrectly, really goes on the rise. And so for me, that is the trajectory that is really important. And again, it's really based on the numbers and the statistics of what we have. Again, we don't control the external complaint. We have no control of that. If somebody calls, it's captured in the system. It's validated by the consent decree. It's validated by the monitor, which is in turn validated by the AG, the Attorney General. So to me, these numbers reflect exactly what our officers are doing, which is being more proactive, but at the same time being professional, being ethical, adhering to constitutionality, and making sure that they are doing the job in the most effective way with the least amount of conflict and least amount of impact to the community they serve. I wanted to break this down because this was also an important aspect as well that I think needs to be reviewed and looked at. And so again, you see in APD, again, offender by race, and this focuses on 2024. And then you see use of force by race related to APD, again, for 2024. These are numbers that are year to date. And so right now, the highest offender by race is Black at 31.44% as far as being involved in criminal activity. The second number being involved in criminal activity is 29.75 with Hispanic. And then we have whites involved in criminal activity in yellow, which is at 27.76%. Now, when you look at the use of force by race, again, it's very consistent. So blacks make up the highest number of use of forces at 34.15%. Second is whites at 32.11%. And then you have a 29.27 of Hispanics. And so when you look at the census, again, the census for the city of Aurora, whites are at about 45%, Hispanics are at 30%, Black are at 16%, Asians are at 7%, Again, this definitely reflects that the most offenders, the most crime and criminal incidents that are occurred were at, on the Black population at 31.44%, which again correlates to the high number of contacts and the potential for the high number of use of forces, which is at 34.15%. And again, this is a comment, and this is something that is really important to have a discussion about, because it says, well, is there bias policing? Is there things that are occurring? Again, this story is not about over policing. It's a snapshot of how crime impacts different communities and how our officers are really responding to it. So our use of forces really isn't being driven by racial bias. It's being driven by individuals that are involved in criminal activity. And unfortunately, that is what occurs. Again, there are social issues with this. There are society issues related to this possibly. But as far as law enforcement, this is what law enforcement has to contend with. We focus on individuals that are conducting and being involved in victimization. We focus on individuals that are involved in criminal activity. We respond to calls for service based upon the individuals picking up the phone and calling us. So again, even with social issues, even with society issues, which are definitely out there, as far as law enforcement, again, I always want to make sure that our numbers reflect the calls for service, our contacts, and how those relate specifically to the population that we're involved with. Another aspect, I just wanted to show you the last one. This is victims by race. And so our largest victims by race, again, is 37.4% with white. Our second highest victims by race is Black with 21.8%. And then we have Hispanics, again, at 29.5%. And so when you look at the statistics, when you look at the data, it truly reflects almost the narrative that goes along with the offender information, that goes along with the use of force information. And other than the victimization, whites are victimized far more than the other aspects within those other two categories. It stayed very consistent as far as those numbers are well. And so again, that to me was really important. Again, when you look at the numbers, and I just wanted to throw out this where we are as 2025. Right now, we are negative as far as total use of forces. This is very important to me. Year to date, use of forces, we are down 29.25% for all of our use of forces. For our tier 1, we are down 34.16%. For our tier 2s, we're down 8.16%. And then for our tier 3s, which are our major use of forces, we are down 50%. And then our OIS is right now, we are down, we are actually up with those two. Last year at this time, we had 0. This year we have 2 based on the one we had last week. But overall in 2024, we had a total of 5. And so we will and should end the year with a lower number, hopefully based upon the response of the individuals that we make contact with and based upon the response of our personnel as we move forward. But I really wanted to show those numbers with you, and I hope that they give you an idea or an understanding of what we are looking at within the Aurora Police Department.
Thank you, Chief. At this time, we don't have any questions for you. I'm sorry, let me rephrase. We do have a question. The question is about the use of the word offender. Is this data capturing the data of those arrested and not charged? Or is this data those who have been charged and convicted?
No, we don't. Again, in the criminal justice system, there's 3 components to it. There's law enforcement, there's courts and corrections. And so the number that we are capturing are the individuals that we contact, the individuals that we arrest for a particular offense. And those are what's considered the offenders. Now, when they go to the next step of the criminal justice system, as far as the courts, that is the decision of the district attorney or the city attorney, whether or not they are going to file charges on it. We don't control that. So I focus specifically on the information of our officers, what they do and how they do it. And that's the information that to me is really important. So that's, I hope that clarifies it.
So we have another question for you from Cassandra Ballard. In a recent meeting, Chief, you mentioned that some APD officers said they were skeptical of changes made in the department to accommodate the consent decree and how it would impact their daily police work and unfairly affect their standing in the department. Is there a sense now that officers have accepted and support the changes so far? how is the department dealing with officers who are still hesitant or skeptical of the changes?
Yeah, I don't know when I made that statement, but I think that is, something that all law enforcement practitioners have to contend with when they're under a consent decree is first you ask the question, well, how did we end up here? And I think that's really an important question. That's something that has to be reviewed because you ended up here because there was something that was wrong. You weren't capturing your data correctly. You weren't demonstrating your data correctly, or your actions were so outrageous that, again, it didn't matter what the data said one way or the other. There was definitely some issues or concerns within that. So to me, that was really the first part, is making sure that we understood what the objectives were. Again, this has been an ongoing process. And so this isn't something that was just generated by me, but it's something that I truly believe in because I've been through this before. It's about making sure that our data was in the right place, making sure that we are capturing what we need to capture. Unfortunately, sometimes, and I think that was the case here, that data doesn't get pushed down to the police officers. So they're involved in this. They're seeing all these new policies coming out. They're seeing all these new things that have to be done. They're seeing all these new processes that have to be done. But they're kind of kept in the dark sometimes. And that's what I saw here. And I'm going to be very candid about that. I didn't see a lot of discussion about, hey, this is where we are in the consent decree. This is what you guys are doing and how it's impacting crime. These are the modifications. Again, they're just told, hey, go to this training, but they're not given the background or the understanding of why. And so again, for me, that was really important as I stepped into this role, is making sure that the community has complete knowledge and understanding about what's occurring, or they have that availability to reach out and find out what's going on. But to me, it was just as important too to make sure that our personnel within the Aurora Police Department were getting fed that same information. And so that's one thing we started. We started doing videos where we are talking about where we are in the consent decree. All the command staff are going into roll calls saying, hey, here's where we are in the consent decree. Here are the things that we've implemented in the consent decree. Again, when you look at the things that the monitor just mentioned in his opening statement about modifications of policy and procedure, each policy and procedure modification always comes with an instructional video. It always comes with a roll call script that basically goes out so that all of the personnel within the agency and the organization have the same information given to them and provided to them. And those are the things, again, with me, knowledge is management, is understanding. And that's, I think, a component that we can really continue to thrive on, is ensuring that these officers understand that, yes, this consent decree was put into place based upon practices, but your success, your involvement in it is going to be what turns the tide. Your commitment getting better to improving is what's making the difference. And I think not only is it improving the understanding of it, but it's putting a sense of pride for them to realize what this organization is doing, how they are doing it, and more importantly, the impact that it's having to crime. Because we're not stepping away from crime fighting, and we're not stepping away from proactive policing. We're not just saying, hey, don't do any more proactive policing. Let's just let this consent decree run. We won't make contact with anybody. I mean, you could do that. And I think that this agency, to a sense, had done that, like a lot of law enforcement agencies across the nation. But that's exactly what we are not doing. We are changing, modifying policies so that our officers are being proactive, so that we are decreasing the number of victims, so that we are also ensuring that individuals are not put in harm's way. And we are also making sure at the same time that the way we treat those individuals that are involved in criminal activity is done ethically and done correctly. And that's, to me, is the message that we are sending out. And that's the message that they need to hear so that they have buy-in to it. Because if they don't have buy-in to it, it doesn't matter what I say at the chief's office. If the personnel that's out pushing the black and white at 2:00 in the morning doesn't understand the objectives, it will fail. And so that's where we have completely shifted. And that's where we have completely made sure that we are going to know their involvement and their work in this aspect has really changed the dynamics of where we are.
Thank you. At this time, we don't have any other questions. Jeff, did you have anything that you wanted to add before Jeanette closes us out? You're on mute.
Obviously, a lot has been covered here. I said it before, I'll say it again. We are on the right track. The fire department the police department, and the Civil Service Commission have all done commendable work in meeting their obligations under the consent decree. It doesn't mean that it's all done, because it's not. But we are moving in the right direction and moving at the right speed. And we will make sure that these reforms are being felt on the streets of Aurora by the residents of Aurora, and for the residents of Aurora. So I thank Chief Chamberlain, I thank Chief Robnett, and Chief Otten for all that they have done to get us to this point, and look forward to continuing working with each of them and the Civil Service Commission to make sure that we end up in the right spot at the right time. And I look forward to that day. So thank you to all.
Thank you, Jeff. We did have one other question come in, either for Chief Chamberlain or for you, Jeff. Is there one instance that you can share that exemplifies how different the department is now than it was 5 years ago in regards to changes made by the consent decree?
Yeah, there are a lot of them, but I think the one that I will focus on is the change at the Force Review Board. It used to be that the Force Review Board, and when we first got here, the Force Review Board was focused on the moment that an incident occurred, a use of force occurred. And that has been broadened substantially to understand not only what happened at the moment that an incident occurred, a use of force occurred, but how did we get there? And most of all, what could have been done differently to have achieved a better result? That now is a question which is asked at every Force Review Board for every case which is being reviewed. And that is really the essence of continuous improvement. And it's not just being asked at the Force Review Board, but the protocol that we use at the Force Review Board is being pushed down to the first line supervisors, so that sergeants who are looking at tier 1 uses of force are asking that same question of the men and women that are working directly for them. How could we have achieved a better result in this particular instance? And we're doing a lot of work in policies and procedures, but you've heard me talk about the philosophy of continuous improvement. And that really is at the heart of this consent decree. When this department comes out from under the consent decree and has a philosophy of continuous improvement and are always asking itself, what could we have done differently to have achieved a better outcome, then we will know that we have achieved all that the consent decree really set out to achieve. Chief Chamberlain, I don't know if you have more to add to that.
I completely concur with the monitor's view on that. To me, understanding how use of forces occur, why they occurred, not just in the actual event, but what led up to it, both from the perspective of the officers, as well as the community members, as well as our suspects, is incredibly, incredibly important. And then more importantly than just that incident is how can that be modified, changed, rectified, to impact an entire organization. And sometimes that gets forgotten. Sometimes an incident occurs, you get so myopic or focused on that incident that you forget that another officer in another day or another week or another year could be in that same situation. And so being able to dissect these incidences and then look at them and then say, this is where we could improve. This is where there's a deficiency, and this is where we can enhance it. So for our next event, our officers can perform in a better way. To me, that is really important. And so that's what we're focused on. And that's one aspect that is incredibly important. Another aspect, and then I'll just speak specifically about during my tenure here, has been solidifying what law enforcement's mission is. So I talked about those three aspects of law enforcement. But I think, again, we have gone in leaps and bounds as far as being able to modify in a very short time an understanding of where community members in the city of Aurora are being victimized, and then how do we effectively address that. And that to me is really an important aspect, because it's really a balance to be proactive. It's a balance to make sure that we are not allowing individuals to hurt somebody else, to victimize somebody else, but making sure that we are holding those individuals that are doing the victimization accountable, but doing it in an ethical and a right way. And so the systems that we have put on and related to crime control, the meetings that we have, not just looking at, well, what crime was last week, but to me, more importantly, saying what is our strategy and what is our process that we are going to implement to make sure that we have as much prevention as possible. And that's exactly what we've been able to do. And so again, those numbers that reflect a reduction in crime, an increase in productivity, but then also a reduction in use of forces, that to me is really important, because it shows that we are not over policing a location. We are focused on the individuals that are hurting others. We are not focusing on a particular race, ethnicity, community. We are actually focusing on those locations and those individuals that are causing the issue. And then when we do connect with them, we are doing it in the most ethical and proper way possible.
Thank you. Chief Robinette, Dave Perry asked, about a year ago, firefighters voiced concerns that court verdicts linked to the Elijah McClain death could have a chilling effect on recruitment for the fire department. Has that been the case?
So initially, after the court verdict, some of our recruitment events were sparsely attended. However, we don't hire as frequently as the police department does. We just completed a hiring process for 34 positions. We received nearly 800 applications that we had to narrow down to those 34. And we believe, I could tell you that entering this academy is probably one of the most diverse academy classes we've had in 5-6 years, maybe even a decade. So we haven't realized that impact. In fact, our recruitment efforts of the recruitment plan that was oversaw by the consent monitors and developed by Civil Service Commission and HR with us has proven, at least on this recruitment class, to be extremely effective.
Thank you. Okay. Jason, did you have anything that you wanted to add? I just saw you come back on camera.
No, I mean, other than the department has made significant efforts to address those concerns within the department. One of the things they've done within the department is stand back up the EMS branch, making sure that firefighters and paramedics are feeling supported in their practice, and they understand what the expectations of them are. So I think the department has done a very good job of trying to address those concerns of existing firefighters. And then you heard Chief Robinette talk about our recruiting efforts as we try and continue to make sure we're attracting the best and brightest to both departments.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, we don't have any other questions. I am posting a link in chat because we would love to continue this conversation. So if you have any questions that come up after this event, please feel free to send those. They go directly to the consent decree monitor and will be dispersed from there. To close us out, I'd like to turn it over to Jeanette, our chairperson of the Community Advisory Council.
Thank you, Cassandra. And so as we come to a close of today's virtual town hall, I just want to take a moment to thank each and every one of you for being here and for taking the time to engage in this important conversation. Again, my name is Jeanette Rodriguez, and I serve as the chair of the Community Advisory Council. And it's an honor to work alongside such dedicated community members, city officials, and partners in the oversight and reform. So today's discussion centered around Report 8 of the Consent Decree, a significant milestone in our continued effort to build accountability, transparency, and trust between the Aurora Police Department and the fire department, the city of Aurora, and our community. And this town hall was designed not only to provide updates and highlight progress, but also to give you, the residents of Aurora, a voice in this process. Your questions, your insights, and your concerns are essential as we move forward towards lasting change. Again, we're very deeply committed and deeply grateful to the independent monitoring team, and we're committed to changes. We thank representatives from the Attorney General's office, Chief Chamberlain, Chief Robnett, city officials, Jason Batchelor, and all of you who contributed to today's conversation. Your commitment and collaboration continue to move this work forward. And as we near the end of the consent decree, the role of the community in this oversight becomes very, very important, even more vital. So the Community Advisory Council remains dedicated to ensuring the momentum and progress made are carried into the future. So again, if you want to review the report 8, or submit any other questions or any more feedback, please go to auroramonitor.org/reports. Thank you again for being part of this effort. Let's continue working together to ensure a better, stronger, and more equitable Aurora. Thank you so much. Have a good rest of the day, guys.
Thank you all.
Very nice.